Today I'm going to finish off answering the how do we go about with tackling the how useful is the source question. So this one is only for those people who are doing Edexcel. AQA, I know you have the how useful is the source question, but the sources they give you are slightly different. And so we're going to tackle them in a slightly different way. But don't worry, I've got your own video and it's coming soon. So if you're doing Edexcel, I've already done a video on how we tackle half these questions. This is the second video. We're going to look at how we tackle the remainder of them. So these questions are really important for us if we're doing Edexcel because they come up twice. So you're going to answer it once in paper one with your historic environment, and I've put the topics up there again, and paper three in the depth study. So you answer the questions exactly the same way for paper one and paper three. So once you really get good understanding of exactly how we answer these questions, you get to do it twice, you get double the marks for your knowledge. So it's worth 16 marks overall across both papers. And the question will always be, how useful are sources A and B for an inquiry into something? So by inquiry, they just mean a project, an investigation. If you were going to learn more about a topic, you would do an inquiry. So how useful are those sources if you wanted to learn more about something? Policing in Whitechapel, medicine in World War One, how the Nazis feel about Jews, something like that. So they'll always give you a focus. And if you've seen my last video, you know that we use COP. So whenever we have a how useful are the sources, we always COP them. So that's content. And we use our own knowledge to judge the content, how what they say in the source fits in with what we already know about the topic. So the examiner isn't expecting you to pretend you know nothing about this topic. They're expecting you to take your knowledge of the topic and use it to judge the source. And what we're going to look at today is provenance and the purpose of the source. So don't worry if you're not entirely sure what they mean by provenance. That's really common when you tackle sources, and we're going to go over it right now. So here is a source that they've used. This is in the Whitechapel, so the crime and punishment throughout time. So it says, how useful are sources A and B for an inquiry into problems facing immigrants? So the provenance is the bit that we see above the source. It's all this information here. So it says source B. From a report by Herbert Evans, written C means around 1900, Evans was an assistant inspector of factories. His report was sent to a government group which was producing an official report on immigration. Here he is describing the conditions in which some immigrants worked and lived. All of that information is the provenance. Everything underneath we call the content of the source, what's included in it. The extra information is the provenance. And here's another example. So this is from a paper three topic. This is Nazi Germany. So the question was, how useful are sources A and B for an inquiry into the Nazi treatment of women? So we see the poster. The poster's our content. And above it, it says source B, the NSDAP, which we know is short for the Nazis. So the NSDAP, the Nazis, secure the community. If you need advice and help, contact the local group. A propaganda poster from around 1934 promoting the Nazi Women's Organization. So all of that information there is the provenance, and they often will give you the English. So there is no expectation for the Nazis that you know any German. If they give you posters with German words on it, they will translate it for you in English. But in the provenance, you get a translation of what the poster says and then a little bit of information about it. So how we're going to go about tackling this. First up, we're going to think, would the author know about the topic? Are they in a position to know about this? Now, so far, Edexcel has never given a source where the author doesn't know about the topic. That doesn't mean we can say definitely they won't in the future, But it's worth tucking into the back of your mind that so far, every single source they've given, the author's known about the topic. So, would the author know about the topic? So, the author here is Herbert Evans. Gives us a bit of information about him. He's an assistant inspector of factories. Okay, he's writing a report on immigration. Would someone who is inspecting factories, that we see here in the content, he's talking about the workshops that the immigrants work in, would he understand some of the problems facing immigrants? So the answer is absolutely he would. So, okay, he's not an immigrant himself, but his job is to go and investigate places of work where immigrants are working. So, absolutely, he would be in a position to know about the topic, and that makes it useful. So, remember, for these questions, we always refer back to the question, how useful? Is it useful? Is it not useful? So how I would word this is I would say the source is useful because it's written by Herbert Evans, an assistant inspector of factories, who would therefore know what working conditions for immigrants were like. Same for this one. It's really tempting to go straight into the fact that they're Nazis and it's a propaganda poster. But would the author know about the topic? So would the Nazi Party know about the Nazi treatment of women? And the answer again is absolutely they would. So if you want to know how someone treats women, they're a brilliant source. So we can't necessarily trust them to tell the truth, but that's something different. At the moment, we just want to know, would they know about the topic? Yes, they would. So again, I would say this source is useful because it's written by the Nazi Party and they would know how the Nazis treated women. So then the next one, which is the one, especially on the Nazis, it's eager to jump to. Can we trust the author? And this is something everyone is really quite good at. So we call it being reliable. Can we trust the source? Is it reliable? And students always naturally just kind of have a good sense. Can you trust this person? Yes or no? So go with your gut instinct. So we've got Herbert Evans. He's not an immigrant. He has no need to decide a certain way. He's not got any reason to lie. His job is just write a report. So it's an official report that he's been paid to write. There's no reason for him to lie. And then as a final thing, so we'd say the source is useful because we can trust the author. So Evans was given the job to go and produce an official report on immigration. He has no reason to lie. And then we can back it up by looking at the content. As well as this, from the content, I can see that what he is saying fits with my own knowledge, and you put in facts to back it up. Therefore, it's useful because he is being truthful. So you don't, again, have to pretend you haven't read the source. You can say, I think he's reliable, and having read what he's written, he's truthful. So I know what his report is saying is absolutely truthful, and that backs up my feeling that I can trust him. So paper one, they tend to be more trustworthy. Paper three, can we trust the author? So here we've got to be a little bit careful. So it is a propaganda poster, which makes it not as useful because the whole point of a propaganda poster is try and persuade you into thinking the way the Nazis want you to think. So looking at the source, using your own knowledge, is this a reliable or trustworthy view of how the Nazis treat women? So what I would say is, on one level, it is useful because it is showing us how the Nazis see the role of women. So she's there in the center of her family. She's surrounded by children. She's got her husband there. She's in a very traditional female role. And that is trustworthy because we know that is how the Nazis wanted women. However, it's not trustworthy because they present it in a very rosy light. She looks very happy, very fulfilled. Some women were very happy and very fulfilled by this role, but not all. So it doesn't make it clear that this is the only option for women, whether you like it or not. So, in that sense, it's not useful because it's only giving us one side of the story. It only shows the positives, it doesn't show the negatives of the Nazi treatment of women. So, no, we can't trust the author. Don't go down the road of saying it's made by the Nazis, therefore it must be a lie. So, a lot of the sources from Nazis are lies, but sometimes they produce sources where it's in their interest to tell the truth. So, always look at the content as well. And then the final thing you need to do is just look at the purpose. So, the purpose just means, why did they bother? Why did the artist paint that picture? Why did the photographer take that photograph? Why did the author sit down and write it? And we're going to remember it with the acronym RIPE. So it will be one of these four things. So R is for record. Simply, they were just keeping a record of what had happened. In the same way, maybe we take a photograph of ourselves or our loved ones because we're just having something we can look back on. Diary entries would also come under this. They're just keeping a record that in the future they can look back on. I is kind of similar, it's to inform. So you're just trying to tell someone else what has happened. So your textbooks are a good example of a source that's just there to inform. It's there to share knowledge. So maybe you're doing medicine through time, the medical records with the statistics that they're sending off to sort of HQ to tell them about what they're doing. Or in Whitechapel, maybe some reports on crimes that they're sending up to their superior officers. So you're just trying to tell someone something. But those two, record and inform, are quite nice and straightforward because no one's trying to lie. No one's trying to make something seem better or worse than it actually is. Everyone's just honestly trying to either share or record information. So those tend to be really useful. P is to persuade. So trying to persuade someone around to your way of thinking, make them agree with you. And that obviously is less useful. So it can be useful in the sense that we can see what people are trying to persuade others to do. So Source B we've been looking at is a really good example for showing us the propaganda that the Nazis are putting out there, how they want the women to think. That's really useful. But often we do have to take it with a pinch of salt that what they're saying won't necessarily be the whole truth. And the last one, which is really rare, but it does come up occasionally, is to entertain. Sometimes you get this with political cartoons. So they're trying to make a point, but they're trying to do it in a way that entertains. Now, don't panic if you can't work out which one it is, because sometimes they can be both. So, political cartoon can be used to inform people about the issues of the day, what's going on, but there's also an element of it's in an entertaining, humorous way. So, what is the purpose of this source? So, our options are it's to record, it's to inform, it's to persuade, or it's to entertain. Okay, so the purpose of this source is just to inform. So he's written a report, it's sent to a government group which was producing an official report. So he's informing this government group. So he would have been one of many inspectors who's been sent out to gather information. He writes up his report, he sends it to the group, they learn from it. Nice and straightforward, and that makes it useful. So it's just there to inform. And then last one, what's the purpose of this poster? Well, it's to persuade. So it's to persuade women that the Nazis are the best sort of option for women for how they should behave. You've got the phrase secure the community. need advice and help, contact the local group. It's persuading women to get it on board with the Nazis and the Nazi ideals. And that makes it slightly less useful. We've got to take it with a pinch of salt. We know from our own knowledge that the Nazis didn't have this sort of rosy view of women and that their lives were going to be completely happy and fulfilled. So that is how you tackle the question. So you look at the propaganda. Would that person know what they're talking about? Can we trust them to tell the truth? And then we finish off looking at the purpose. Is it to record, inform, persuade, entertain? But always coming back to that idea of usefulness. Is the source useful? Is it not useful?